Stay home. I'm embarrassed to introduce you as my boyfriend, she said before her high school reunion. I said, absolutely. Then I used that night to move out completely. She came home at 2 a.m. to empty rooms and a note. You don't need to be embarrassed anymore. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The dress was a slash of crimson against our beige bedroom wall. Chloe stood before the mirror, twisting, scrutinizing her silhouette with a critical eye I knew wasn't for me. Do I look like I've peaked? She asked, her voice tight with an anxiety I didn't fully understand. You look incredible, I said, and meant it. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, the one we'd assembled together 2 years ago, laughing as the instructions failed us. Now, my praise was just background noise. She sighed, a dramatic weight of the world sound. Ugh. Jessica posted the guest list. Tyler Briggs is coming. He started that, like, crypto advisory firm? Or something. Drives a G-Wagon. I nodded, not sure what I was supposed to say. I'd heard about the 10-year reunion for months. It had morphed from a casual, maybe into a military-grade campaign. New dress, new haircut, a sudden interest in spin classes. My role, I assumed, was to be the supportive boyfriend. The arm candy. Or just the arm. I decided to step into the breach. So, what's the final plan for Saturday? Are we meeting the group there? Or? She stopped twisting. In the mirror, her eyes met mine, then flicked away. She smoothed the red fabric over her hips. About that, the room got very quiet. The hum of the central air filled the space between us. Look, Mark, she began, turning to face me finally. Her expression was a practiced blend of apology and condescension, the one she used when explaining something obvious to me. It's a specific crowd. A lot of successful people from my year. Lawyers, consultants, people who, you know, own things. Sarah's husband is a cardiothoracic surgeon. Amanda married that tech bro who sold his app. I just listened, a cold knot beginning to form in my stomach. She continued, waving a hand in my general direction. I can't spend the whole night explaining what you do, or why you're still, you know, finding your path. It's a whole thing. He's in IT. He's between projects. He's looking at certifications. She said the words in a faint, mocking tone, as if quoting a tedious textbook. It's embarrassing. The word hung in the air, solid and ugly. Embarrassing. A flashback hit me, unprompted and cruel. 2 years ago, in this same room, she was sobbing over a failed final presentation for her marketing internship, convinced she'd blown her future. I held her, ordered her favorite pho, and spent the night helping her rebuild the deck on my laptop, using skills she was now mocking. You're my rock, she'd whispered, her face puffy and grateful. I'd be lost without you. Now, I was the thing she was lost with. The weight holding her back from the G-Wagons and the surgeons. The cold knot spread. But alongside the hurt, something else flickered, a crystal clear, icy clarity. I looked at her, at the perfect makeup masking her face, at the worry in her eyes that was solely for her own social standing. The woman I'd loved was behind a pane of glass, tapping on it not to get out, but to point at all the things she now found more interesting outside. I didn't get angry. I didn't plead. The fight drained out of me in a single, quiet exhalation. All that was left was the truth. Absolutely, I said. My voice was flat, calm, not agreement, not submission. It was simply an acknowledgement of a fact she had stated. You are an embarrassment. Therefore, you should not come. Statement received. Relief flooded her features. She misread the calm for compliance, for my usual easygoing nature bending to her will. She smiled, the tension leaving her shoulders. She floated over and pecked me on the cheek, a dry, perfunctory gesture. You're the best, she chirped, the dismissive tone gone, replaced by transactional gratitude. I'll make it up to you. We'll order that fancy sushi tomorrow, just us. It'll be better than dealing with all that drama anyway. She turned back to the mirror, grabbing her phone. I need to text the group. Jessica was betting you'd throw a fit. She let out a little laugh, typing rapidly. I sat on the bed, watching her. The crimson dress. The focused frown. The gentle tap of her manicured thumbs on the screen, likely typing, crisis averted. He's cool with it. I was cool with it. Just not in the way she thought. Absolutely, I said again, so softly it was almost inaudible. A promise to myself. The campaign was over. The war, however, had just begun, and I had just decided on the only strategy that made sense. Total, silent, irreversible withdrawal. The click of the apartment door lock behind her was the starting pistol. For a full minute, I didn't move. I stood in the living room, listening to the silence. It was a different silence than the tense quiet from before. This was hollow, empty. A stage after the actor had delivered her final, ruinous line and exited. The performance was over. I walked to the window, peeling back the edge of the blinds just enough to see the street below. Her rideshare was pulling away, its red taillights dissolving into the Saturday night traffic. Gone. The icy clarity that had seeped into me during her speech was now a solid, guiding core. There was no anger, no grief. Not yet. There was only a list of tasks, suddenly obvious and urgent. My phone was in my hand. I scrolled to Jake, brother, and pressed call. He answered on the second ring, the sound of a video game in the background. Hey, shouldn't you be getting ready for the big night? I need the truck, I said, my voice steady, robotic. The game sounds paused. What's up? You okay? Chloe told me not to come. She said I was an embarrassment to her in front of her successful friends. I recited it like a news headline. I'm leaving. Tonight. While she's out. I need the truck, and I need your hands. A beat of stunned silence, then a low whistle. Holy shit. Are you serious? Where are you going? Your couch. For a few nights. Then I'll figure it out. Can you come? I'm on my way. No more questions. That's why he was my first call. The next 2 hours were a lesson in detachment. I moved through our shared space not as a heartbroken lover, but as a salvage operator. My belongings were categorized not by sentiment, but by logistical priority and ownership. I started with the documents and essentials: passport, birth certificate, laptop, the small lockbox with the few pieces of jewelry left to me by my grandfather. I filled 2 suitcases with clothes, focusing on my practical items: jeans, work polos, jackets. I left the nice shirt she'd bought me for her cousin's wedding last summer hanging in the closet. Let it haunt the empty space. The furniture was a tricky calculus. We'd accumulated it in a messy blend of ours and mine. The bed frame was hers, a trendy, rattling thing she'd insisted on. The mattress was mine, bought with my first decent bonus. I stripped the sheets, left them in a pile. The mattress I maneuvered to stand against the wall in the living room. A white flag made of memory foam. The bookshelf was mine, solid oak from a flea market. I emptied it, box after box of my books hitting the floor with dull thuds. My TV, the 55-inch I'd saved for, was unhooked from the entertainment center she'd chosen. I wiped the smart TV clean of my profiles, my logins, my viewing history. Unsubscribed from the shared streaming accounts. Digital erasure. Jake arrived, his face a mask of concerned fury. He took one look at me, calm, methodically wrapping coffee mugs in newspaper, and just nodded. Just tell me what to lift. We worked in efficient silence. My desk, my chair, the worn but comfortable armchair from my old apartment. We didn't speak about her. We spoke about weight distribution, about the best angle to get the mattress down the stairwell without scuffing the walls. Halfway through, as we were carrying a box of my kitchenware, the good knife I'd bought, my cast iron skillet, Jake paused. Dude, are you okay? You're freaking me out a little. It's like you're a robot. I set the box down and looked at the apartment. It was becoming a carcass. A space where a life had been, now being efficiently butchered for parts. I feel very clear, I said, and it was the truth. The pain was a distant tremor, far beneath the permafrost. All she did was turn on a light. She showed me exactly what this room was. I'm just choosing to walk out of it. He shook his head, a grudging respect in his eyes. Okay, then let's finish clearing the room. The final touch was the note. I sat at the bare kitchen counter. The stools were hers, on the last remaining chair. I took a single sheet of printer paper and a pen. No dramatic flourishes. No accusations. Just facts, laid out as cleanly and finally as the empty spaces in the living room. Chloe, you don't need to be embarrassed anymore. I've taken all traces of me. My half of the rent is paid through the end of the month. The key is on the counter. Do not contact me. Mark. I read it over. It was perfect. It granted no quarter for argument, no hook for drama. It was a door closing, spelled out in 12-point Times New Roman. I placed it squarely on the kitchen counter. I set my key next to it. The final object tying me to this place. Jake and I took the last load down. The back of his truck was a Tetris stack of my life. He slammed the tailgate shut. That's it. I looked up at the window of what was, for another few hours at least, my apartment. The light was on in the living room, shining onto the empty floor. That's it. I didn't feel a rush of freedom. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt light. Not the good kind, but the unnerving kind of an astronaut whose tether has been cut, adrift, but with a whole, silent, star-filled void ahead. Let's go, I said. We drove away. I didn't look back. The note, the key, the empty rooms, they were no longer my concern. They were a museum exhibit she would walk into, a curated display titled, "The Consequences of Your Words." My work here was done. The first week at Jake's was a study in sensory deprivation. His spare room was a box, white walls, a single window facing an alley, a futon that groaned like a dying animal. It was perfect. There was nothing of us here. No throw pillows she'd insisted on. No scented candles that gave me a headache. No ghost of her perfume on the pillows. Just sterile, neutral space. The silence was a physical thing. For the first few days, I simply existed within it. I went to work at the IT help desk. I came home. I ate takeout with Jake in front of his TV. We didn't talk about her unless he cautiously broached it, and my answers were short, factual, and devoid of emotion. She hasn't contacted me. I blocked her number. The apartment is empty. He stopped asking. The numbness was a protective shell. Inside it, I began the quiet, meticulous work of dismantling the life I'd shared with her. I changed my primary email address. I unfollowed and muted every mutual friend, every restaurant, every band she'd introduced me to on social media. It wasn't anger, it was gardening. Pulling weeds to see what, if anything, was left of my own landscape. The shell began to crack around day 10. Not from sadness, but from a sudden, overwhelming sense of possibility. The peace I felt in that blank room wasn't the absence of her, it was the presence of option. One evening, instead of mindlessly scrolling, I opened my laptop. For years, I talked about getting a cloud security certification. Chloe's eyes would glaze over. Sounds expensive, babe. And you're so tired after work. I let it go. I found the course. I registered. I paid for it with the money I'd been saving for a vacation she'd wanted to take. The click of the confirm purchase button was more satisfying than any kiss in recent memory. I started waking up early. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of my own thoughts. I'd make coffee and study for an hour before work. The complex protocols and architectures were a soothing puzzle. They had rules, cause and effect. They were not human emotions. I reached out to Leo, an old college friend who drifted away after a double date where Chloe had pronounced him kind of a downer. We met for a beer. He asked what happened. I gave him the 3-word version. She was embarrassed. He didn't press. We talked about basketball, about his job, about the absurdity of the corporate software we both navigated. I laughed, a real laugh that felt rusty in my throat. It didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like remembering a language I'd forgotten. This was my new normal. A smaller, quieter, but entirely self-determined life. The ghost of her voice, embarrassing, still echoed sometimes, but it was growing faint, drowned out by the click of my keyboard, the scratch of my note-taking, Leo's easy laughter. The first crack in her world came through a muted notification, 3 weeks after the night. A message from Derek, a mutual friend who'd always been more of a neutral party. The preview text glowed on my screen. "Hey man, hope you're doing okay. Saw Chloe last weekend. Wow, just wow." A cold, clinical curiosity settled over me. I opened it. "Derek, hey man, hope you're doing okay. Saw Chloe last weekend. Wow, just wow." "Derek, we were at that bar on Elm. She was with Jessica. Looked like she'd been crying." "Derek, she asked if I'd talk to you. I said no. She got this wild look. Started saying you'd abandoned her, that you'd ghosted her over a stupid misunderstanding." "Derek, Jessica was shushing her, trying to get her to leave. It was a whole scene." "Derek, what the hell happened?" I stared at the words. Abandoned. Ghosted. A scene. I felt nothing. No pity, no schadenfreude. It was data. I typed back, careful, neutral. We broke up. It was definitive. I've moved on." "Derek, dude, she's telling people you had a secret mental breakdown and just vanished. That you left all your stuff." A beat. Then another message. "Derek, Sarah from her reunion committee messaged me. Said the reunion was a disaster for Chloe. My thumb hovered. The professional curiosity deepened. I needed the facts, not the drama. Me, what did Sarah say? A long pause. He was typing. The story arrived in chunks. Derek said Chloe showed up alone, obviously. Super tense. People asked about you. She gave some vague excuse about you having work commitments. Derek. Then Sarah. You remember Sarah? Nice, kind of blunt, said. Oh, that's a shame. We were all looking forward to finally meeting Mark. Chloe always used to say he was her rock, the only sane thing in her life. I stopped breathing for a second. A phantom ache, quickly smothered. Derek. Apparently Chloe just froze. Went bright red. Couldn't form a sentence. Mumbled something and practically ran to the bar. Derek spent the rest of the night getting wasted in a corner with Jessica. Crying. Not the cute cry. The ugly, messy cry. Derek. Sarah said the whole successful crowd she was so stressed about, they just kind of avoided her after that. It was awkward. Derek. The guy with the G-Wagon, Tyler? He apparently asked Jessica if Chloe was always this unstable. I read the final line twice. Unstable. The word she'd feared being associated with. The flaw she'd projected onto me to avoid confronting in herself. The irony was so precise, it was almost poetic. Derek sent one more message. Derek. So, you didn't have a breakdown. You just left. Me. I just left. Derek. Damn. Respect. She's spinning hard, man. It's kind of sad. Sad. That was the expected response. The human response. I searched for the feeling and found only a vast, quiet emptiness where sympathy should have been. Me. Thanks for the intel. Hope you're good. Derek. Yeah, man. Take care. I placed the phone face down on the table. I looked out Jake's window at the brick wall of the adjacent building. A feeling, solid and warm, finally rose in my chest. It wasn't happiness at her distress. It was validation. Her performance had failed. The audience had seen the cracks in the set, heard the desperation in the actor's voice. The very judgment she'd sought to avoid had found her anyway, not because of me, but because of the person she became when she tried to hide me. The peace I was building in my silent room wasn't a lie. It wasn't a performance for anyone. It was real. And her very public unraveling was proof that the world I'd walked away from was made of smoke. I picked up my phone. I deleted the entire message thread with Derek. I didn't need a trophy. I didn't need a chronicle of her downfall. The only thing I needed was the quiet and the next module in my course. I opened my laptop. The hum of the processor was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of moving on. The messages began exactly 1 month and 1 day after the reunion. The rent-free period on our old apartment had expired. My phone, silent for weeks except for Jake and Leo, buzzed with an unknown number. The area code was hers. Unknown number. Mark, we need to talk. This is childish. You can't just disappear. I read it. The tone was so perfectly her. The aggrieved authority. The framing of my total withdrawal as petulance. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. It was like getting a spam email about an extended car warranty. I swiped the notification away. I did not block the number. I wanted to see the script play out. She was a show I was no longer watching, but I'd read the reviews. The next day, another. Unknown number. I'm sorry about what I said. You took it the wrong way. It was just pre-party anxiety. Come home. We can fix this. You took it the wrong way. The classic rewrite. Come home. To what? The empty apartment? The ghost of the man she'd dismissed? I placed the phone back on my desk and refocused on my practice exam. The question about firewall configurations was infinitely more engaging. The plea came on day 3, softer, more manipulative. Unknown number. The apartment is so empty. I can't sleep. I keep thinking I hear you in the other room. This is cruel. Please say something. Cruel. The word vibrated with hypocrisy. I pictured her there, surrounded by the absence I'd created, finally feeling the weight of the space where my presence had been. It wasn't me she missed. It was the audience for her performance, the foundation she'd taken for granted. I didn't reply. The silence was my answer. A complete, utter silence more articulate than any words. A week later, my phone rang. A known number this time. Jessica. The lieutenant. The flying monkey. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. On the third ring, a cold professionalism settled over me. I needed to shut this down, permanently. I accepted the call. Mark? Finally. Jessica's voice was all brittle concern. Listen, you need to call Chloe. Right now? She's devastated. She's not eating. She's a mess. I said nothing. What you're doing is so cold. How could you be so cruel? She made one little mistake. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I waited for her to run out of steam. When she paused, likely for my groveling agreement, I spoke. My voice was flat, calm, like I was reading a terms of service agreement. Jessica, this isn't your business. I wish you well. Do not call me again. I ended the call. I then blocked her number. Clean. Efficient. The voicemail came 2 nights later from the unknown number again. Her voice was a ragged mess, sloppy with what sounded like whine and self-pity. The mask had fully cracked. You arrogant bastard, she slurred, the venom startling even through the digital filter. You humiliated me. You were supposed to be there. You were supposed to fight for me. You were supposed to beg me to stay, to prove me wrong. That's what you do. Now everyone knows you left, and they think I'm a bitch. They pity me. Fix this. You fix this right now, Mark. There it was. The core of it. Not regret for her words, but fury at the social consequence. Not a desire for me, but a need for me to play my assigned role in her narrative, the loyal, forgiving doormat, to restore her status. I saved the voicemail, not as a memento, but as a clinical specimen, a reminder of the authentic voice behind the curated image. After listening to it once more, I deleted it. The specimen had been cataloged. It was no longer needed. The ambush came at my gym, a place she'd always mocked as a depressing temple to mediocrity. She knew my Saturday morning schedule. I was leaving, towel around my neck, the endorphin haze of a good workout making the world soft at the edges, when I saw her leaning against my car. She looked smaller. The polished veneer was gone. Her hair was in a messy ponytail, her eyeshadow smudged. She wore leggings and a hoodie I didn't recognize. She looked ordinary. Lost. Mark. She pushed off the car, her body language a plea. Please, just look at me. I stopped a few feet away. I looked. I saw fatigue, desperation, a shattered ego. I felt the same detachment as when I'd loaded the last box into Jake's truck. You shouldn't be here, I said. My voice was even. Not unkind. Just factual, like telling someone they were in a reserved parking spot. It was the wrong tone. She needed fury, tears, a scene she could work with. My calm was a wall she couldn't scale. Her eyes filled with panicked tears. I was stressed, she cried, taking a step forward. I didn't mean it. Not really. You know how important image is in my industry. I was just trying to fit in. She reached out, her fingers brushing my arm. You're my person. You're my piece. I can't do this without you. The line was a parody, an echo of a feeling that had died the moment she'd spoken the word embarrassing. I slowly, deliberately, removed her hand from my arm. There was no violence in the motion, only finality. No, Chloe, I said, meeting her watery gaze. I'm not. Goodbye. I unlocked my car, got in, and started the engine. She stood frozen on the curb, her face collapsing into a mask of utter disbelief. In my rearview mirror, I saw her shrink, then disappear as I turned the corner. I didn't wonder what she would do next. I didn't care. She was now part of the scenery, a signpost I had firmly, finally, driven past. 6 months is a long time in a life being rebuilt. Jake's futon was replaced by my own apartment, a small, sunlit one-bedroom that smelled of coffee and new books. The cloud security certification was framed on my wall. I'd gotten a promotion, not a huge one, but one that came with a title that didn't require air quotes, security analyst. The path was no longer something I was finding. I was walking it. I'd also found a study group. Elena was in it. Sharp, sarcastic, with a dry wit that cut through tech jargon like a laser. We'd bonded over a shared hatred of a particularly obtuse instructor. It was purely platonic, a meeting of minds. We'd often grab coffee after our Saturday session to debrief and complain. It was effortless. There was no performance, no image management. We just talked. We were at our usual spot, a bustling coffee shop with huge windows. I was mid-sentence, explaining a network penetration concept, using a napkin as a diagram. Elena was laughing, pointing at my terrible drawing. So the firewall is just a sad little fence here? A neglected, sad little fence, I clarified, grinning. That's when I felt it. A shift in the atmosphere, like a cold draft. I looked up. Chloe was standing 10 feet away, just inside the door, holding a to-go cup. She looked aged. Not older, but worn thin. Her hair was perfectly styled again, her coat expensive, but it hung on her like a costume. Her eyes were locked on me, wide with a storm of emotions, shock, a flicker of hope, a dawning, awful comprehension. Elena followed my gaze. "Friend of yours?" she asked quietly, her playful tone gone. "Not even remotely," I said, my voice calm. I took a sip of my coffee. Chloe moved then, a determined stride that ate up the distance. She stopped at our small table, ignoring Elena completely. "Mark?" "Hi." Her voice was tremulous, a careful blend of surprise and warmth. It was a performance, but the audience was me, and I was no longer buying tickets. "Chloe," I said. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I simply acknowledged her presence, the way one might acknowledge a server who'd brought the wrong order. "Can we talk for a second?" Privately. Her eyes darted to Elena, who had politely looked down at her phone, giving us a semblance of space while staying firmly, solidly present. I didn't move. I held my coffee cup in both hands, feeling its warmth. I looked at Chloe, at the pleading in her eyes, at the tense set of her jaw. I felt nothing but a profound, anchoring peace. This was no longer my ghost. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. My tone was the same one I used to state that the server was back online. A simple, immutable fact. Her face tightened. The hope curdled into something sharper, uglier. Her eyes cut to Elena again, this time with a flash of venom. The mask slipped completely. "I see you moved on," she hissed, the tremble in her voice now one of rage. "Is this why you left? You had her waiting? Was I just some placeholder?" It was the last, desperate rewrite, casting herself as the victim of my secret scheming. I almost felt sorry for the sheer, exhausting effort of it. I set my cup down. I looked at her, not through her, my gaze steady and clear. I gave her a small, closed-lipped smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has reached the end of a very long, very complicated calculation and found a simple, elegant answer. "Chloe," I said, my voice low, firm, and utterly final. "I left because you told me who you were. I believed you. My life now is peaceful. You're part of a past I don't think about. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for, but it has nothing to do with me." I paused, letting the words settle like dust. "Please, have a good day." I turned my head back to Elena. I picked up the napkin diagram. So, as I was saying about the server architecture, the real vulnerability wasn't the fence. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't hear if she made a sound. My focus was complete. The world narrowed to the problem on the table, the friend across from me, the warm coffee, the sun through the window. After a moment, Elena looked up. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine with genuine, mild concern. I met her gaze, and my smile this time was real, easy, unforced. "Yeah," I said, and for the first time since that night, I knew it was the complete and absolute truth. A ghost from the past. It's nothing. And it was. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.